Hi, welcome back to Lofty English. I hope you've watched the metacognition videos. They set out the thinking frame of mind for you and they should really help you to get the most out of your learning. We're starting here with the major English skill of retrieving ideas from texts. We're using the simplest kinds of language in this video, simplest techniques that you can use to study text. And if you find this really easy, well, be sure to watch the next in the Retrieval series that increases the degree of difficulty. But if it's already all you can cope with, don't worry, master this level and then move on to the same level starter guides on the major English skill of analysis. You ready? Get a cup of tea, get some toast, bit of chocolate spread on top. Let's do this thing. When you start reading texts and learning about texts, you'll be developing how you can tell other people about what you've just read. The retrieval of ideas from a text is something that you learn to do from a really young age, but don't think that this means that it's a skill only aimed at young people. I'll be doing a video about scaling of difficulty later, but simply put, retrieving ideas gets harder as the text that you are reading gets harder. So you'll definitely be doing this very basic skill at GCSE and A-level and even higher because the texts you study increase in difficulty. So don't underestimate the importance of simply being able to summarise what you've just been told in your own words. You can rehearse this skill with other people by sharing the reading of a text together and then going through what you know to have just been told and seeing what you each know, seeing what you understood that might be different. You can prompt the ideas retrieved from texts by working through 6 typical questions to cover as much of the text as possible. These questions are: who are the main agents in a text? What experiences do they go through? Where are these experiences happening? When do the experiences happen? Why do the experiences happen to these agents in these places? And lastly, how are the agents impacted by these experiences, places and times? Or we can reduce them right down to just the interrogatives: who, what, where, when, why and how. Each of these interrogatives asks a little bit more of the reader because, well, the answers that you're going to get for each of those become sort of increasingly implicit. But the way that people are impacted within a text can be a real challenge to discern. Impact is one of the key ideas to retrieve from a text. Impact means how agents are made to think or feel or behave differently because of the experiences they've been through. A text will show you people or characters being impacted by their experiences. They will come to think differently or feel differently or behave differently because of what they've just been through. So being able to explain or write about a text that you've just read shows that you have a degree of understanding about people. But in English studies, you also need to evidence the ideas that you're retrieving through showing a selection of quotations. And that's what we're going to be demonstrating in this video. We're going to look through a text and then make some selections of quotations which will show us what the characters are going through, what we learn about their experiences, what we learn about the settings and the time that these experiences occur, and importantly, how they are being impacted by these experiences and places and times. The quotations that you choose are a really important part of this skill, and you want to build your responses to questions through providing quotes. And yes, the choice that you make in your selection is one of those markers that assessors use to see your ability, because some quotes are simply more impressive than others. So let's look at an example using those interrogatives to retrieve quotations that tell us about the ideas of an author. So here is the text that we're going to be studying today, and as you can see, it sits in the middle of our English cycle. We'll have a quick look. The text is called "Snatched from a Beach to Train North Korea's Spies." It'll be linked in the information part of the video, and it's an article from the BBC. Now, today's video starts us here. This is where our studies begin. So whilst we're studying then, we're going to start here. Who, what, where, when, why and how. When we read through the text, we can see that it is about Megumi Yokota. And we see Megumi is 13 years old, she goes to school, plays badminton, and she's got friends. Her mother is Saki Yokota. And we also see some other agents in the article too, like the school's night watchman. Police and tracker dogs are involved in this story, and it turns out that it's North Korean agents involved as well. Furthermore, Megumi is not the only victim. The Japanese government get involved, and we find out that there are 17 other people like Megumi. We also then find out a little bit more about analysts getting involved too. We've got all of that coloured in green now. And if we then go back through our text and highlight for the events, what has happened, we can see that Megumi has left her badminton practice, but she never reached home. We get this interesting phrase, the quiet street failed to produce her daughter, which is just another way of saying that she never reached home. We see that Saki runs to the gym expecting to meet her en route. We find out that the children left a long time ago. They head out into the darkness, or the police and the tracker dogs head out into the darkness, scouring nearby pine forests, calling Megumi's name. Saki speeds down roads, frantically scanning every car parked nearby. They search for her, and then there is a boat involved that speeds away with a terrified schoolgirl locked in the hold. They leave no evidence, there's not a single witness, and the case isn't solved, and things become clearer years later that she was abducted, as were other people. So this is the events of our story. So where is this story taking place? A fishing port of Niigata, on the edge of a sea. Well, of course, fishing port on the edge of the sea. 7 minutes walk from home. And she gets maybe as far as 800 feet from her parents' front door. The story starts, these events start when she leaves her school, Yori Middle School. A pine forest is searched. They search a beach, they search the shoreline and the water's edge. We also see that the events take place out on the Sea of Japan, out of Saki's sight, towards the Korean peninsula. So when do these events happen then? Well, after a sunset on a crisp November evening, as 6 o'clock became 7, again, it's just reiterating this idea that it's in the evening, that night, and ultimately the story transpires over years and years from 1977 until at least 1983. So whilst one part of the story takes place on a November evening, the wider narrative is years and years long. Now, there is no why here. This article is much longer, and the article goes into some of the reasons why these events happen, but we can jump straight to the how people are reacting, the impact, the way people feel. And I've highlighted some interesting things here. I've highlighted some of these ideas: sharp winds chilled, grey, rumbling seas at its brink. And down here, but perhaps something stronger and more ineffable drove the mother. And this bit here, the crime was so brazen and bizarre that few would even imagine it. And we'll come to talk about those two and why I've highlighted them as hows. The next set of key terms you need to know are the words explicit and implicit. Some of the ideas that we've just retrieved from some of our quotes were given to you in explicit terms, which means that all you need to understand the quote are the definitions of those words. You've been told in straightforward terms, and even if the words are sophisticated, they're easy to understand. But sometimes the ideas are presented to you in implicit ways, which means that the definitions of words don't really help you. And you need to understand how a culture mixes suggestions of words to hint at ideas. This is our cultural language. And often students who are new to English might not know the culture well enough to understand the implicit ideas of a text. So let's look at some examples now. Some of the language which tells you how people are reacting in our text can be taken as explicit. So when we're told that something stronger and more ineffable is driving Saki, the word ineffable means something that's indescribable or beyond words, or that is deep inside of you. What is being told to you is that her behaviours are being driven by her instincts. The word is sophisticated, but if you know the definition of the word, you know that it is being used here to refer you to ideas of people's instincts. We're also told explicitly that the crime is so incredible that people could never even imagine it happening. We only need the definitions of these words to understand the way that people are feeling about the events. But the implicit language is harder to understand because it relies on some unwritten meanings that we get from our culture. So we can associate the tone of the text, that is the emotions of the people and the characters, associated with sharp winds and seas and rumbling, and even the word brink, which means over the edge, as all indicating this emotional quality of dread and terror. Torches indicating hope because it's light in the dark, and we see ideas of hope linked to light regularly in texts. So now we have fully retrieved the content of our text, recognizing that some of the ideas were told to us in explicit ways and some of the ideas were told to us in implicit ways. And if we look back at our highlighted example, well, we've coloured virtually every part of the text using these interrogatives. There is barely a word left unstudied, and if you can highlight virtually every single word in a text like this, you're doing a really good job of understanding your texts. So how would you practice this skill? Well, by doing exactly what we've done here. Practice this by having some interesting texts to hand and annotate or colour all of the information that you have been told. And if you can get your text to look like our example, it can be said that you have a full understanding of the ideas being presented. You are now ready to look at the next degree of difficulty in retrieval skills, which is connecting your text to larger ideas about the nature of texts and authors, which we'll call themes. Thanks very much for watching. I hope that this has enlightened you and gotten you started with your retrieval skills. This has been Lofty English.